Good evening and welcome to the September meeting of the Salem-Kaiser Transit Board. This evening we have basically a period for public comment, and then we will be approving some items on the consent calendar, which include minutes of past meetings and adopting resolution for the defined benefit program and to amend the defined benefit program for bargaining unit employees and for non-bargaining unit employees, and to approve the 2017 special districts board checklist. And then we have some action items, approval of connector service replacement plan for the and the Title VI analysis of that service, accept the fiscal year 2017 annual security report, approve to execute a contract to purchase new buses for our fixed route service, and approval of the Special Transportation Fund reallocation recommendation. And then we will have a performance report for the 2017 fiscal year. We'll have discussion of the recently passed House Bill 2017, and then reports and some other business resulting from our recent executive session. And with that, I would like to call on Director Lincoln to lead us in our pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Linda, would you please take attendance? Thank you. Are there any announcements or changes to the agenda? Then we'll move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak before the board. Each member's comments are limited to 3 minutes. Has anyone signed up to speak? And is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak? If not, we will move on to the consent calendar.
Move approval of this consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Then we will go to our first action item, which is approval of the connector service replacement plan and the Title VI analysis of that. I'll call on our general manager to
Thank you. I'd ask Matt Berggren, our transit planner 2, to please present the report.
Thanks. President Krebs, members of the board, here today to talk about the replacement plan for the West Salem Connector service. The West Salem Connector on-demand bus service has operated as a pilot project for 2 years. In April 2017, the board voted to end the pilot project and directed staff to explore fixed route alternatives. In this process, staff sought to create new routes that were more useful and would allow for more people to ride with certainty and know when their bus was going to arrive, while also maintaining coverage so riders don't have to walk as far to get to their bus. So staff proposed a number of routing alignments a few months back. This is the draft that we went out to the public with in June and July of 2017. And during that process, we did a number of tabling events in West Salem. We spoke to the West Salem Neighborhood Association, the West Salem Business Association. We put flyers up at businesses in West Salem. We put take ones on the Route 16 and Route 17 buses. And we did a number of digital outreach, including website posts, social media posts, text messaging to people who ride the connector. And we also did a number of, used a bunch of internal outreach strategies, talking to our bus drivers to see their opinions on the proposal. So in the plan, we go through all of the comments we received, how many we received of each type of comment, and list them in order of frequency. I just want to talk about the 5 changes that we're proposing making to our initial proposal. So the first is on Route 27. I should just say, in general, the proposal that we have today is pretty similar to what it was a few months ago. We just have a number of tweaks to try to respond to rider input. So the first is Route 27. If you remember that map that showed the connector points and where the ridership was, these new routes pretty much got to all that ridership except for the Eola Heights Apartments out on Geller Road. That was the one place that we didn't have service going as close to. It was about a mile away. And we were kind of on the fence of whether we would have enough time to do a deviation, whether it was worth going into that area. But after receiving so many, I think we had about 5 or 6 comments asking to go up and closer to that development, and it's a pretty big development there. We decided it was worth it. We brought some buses out there, did some timing, and we believe that we have plenty of time to do that deviation. So Route 17, once it comes down Burley Hill, we'll take a right on Eola, right on Doak's Ferry, right on Geller, and serve the apartments right across the street. And then continue on back onto Eola. So that's the first change. We also had a lot of people liked the new routes and the consistency, but they also wanted the routes to go deeper into the neighborhoods like they do today. In most cases, we weren't able to do that because of the size of the bus, because of trying to keep the bus on time, trying to serve as many people as possible. But there was one case where we were able to do so, and that's up on near Harrod Elementary School. So the initial plan had the route going north on Wallace to Riverbend, taking a left in Riverbend. But we were actually able to change the route without eliminating any stops. We were able to take a left onto Orchard View, a right onto Linwood, and then a left onto Riverbend, and then establish 2 additional stops to the east and to the west of Harrod Elementary School. So it'll provide a little bit more coverage near the school, but also deeper into that neighborhood there. Another request we had received a few comments on was the Wallace Road Park and Ride. Currently, we go right into the Wallace Road Park and Ride, and people were asking for us to continue to do that. We were looking at the option of continuing that, but then we wouldn't be able to go deeper into that neighborhood. So we're planning on reestablishing the stop at Brush College and Wintergreen, which is a 3-minute walk for an able-bodied person from the Park and Ride. So we're not abandoning the Park and Ride, we're just not going directly into it. And there's also a shelter pad right there, so we're planning on putting a new shelter there, reestablishing that shelter. So people will have to walk 3 minutes from the Park and Ride, but then they can wait in a shelter. And then 2 other changes involve Route 17. So the first is that someone pointed out that the first trip of the 27 in the morning, connecting at Glen Creek, didn't have a corresponding trip on the 17 to get them downtown. They'd have to wait 20 or 25 minutes. So we're planning on adding 1 new round trip to the 17, starting that 15-minute service 30 minutes early. So the first trip of this 27 will come in, you'll have about a 5-minute layover, and then you'll transfer to Route 20 or 17 to get to downtown. Another change is that from 2 to 7 during the PM peak, the 17 and the 27, where they go along the same path, weren't meeting up correctly. So the 27 would go through right after the 17, and you'd have to wait 15 minutes to transfer at Glen Creek. So we're planning on changing the timing on the 17 slightly so that the 17 arrives second. So the 27 will get to Glen Creek Transit Center. 2 minutes later, the 17 will leave. So it'll give an opportunity to transfer better. So those are the 5 changes we made to the original plan. And that's all found in attachment A, the full plan, including full schedules. And during the service planning process, staff conducted a Title VI equity analysis to ensure the proposed service plan was equitable, and staff concluded that the context of the change, as well as the process undertaken that led to this proposal, provides a substantial legitimate justification for the district to move forward with the service change as planned. And if you want to review that equity analysis, that's in attachment B. Regarding financial impact, we have a section there showing the cost estimates. We're projecting an increase of about $210,000 a year. That's between the rerouting of Route 16, the additional trip and schedule adjustments on Route 17, and the new routes 26 and 27, and then the removal of the West Salem connector. And most of that increase is a result of the moving from a contracted service to an in-house operated service, which has more costs associated with it. But then also part of it is the increase in route miles and then that round trip on the 17. And there'll also be one-time costs associated with this proposal. So we're going to be removing a number of connector points. About 20 connector points will be removed. A few will be converted to bus stops, and then we'll have about 25 or 30 new bus stops going in. So there'll be a cost associated with that, short-term and long-term. And in the short term, with the bus stop refresh project, we're installing all new poles and signs throughout the entire system, and we'll be putting the new poles and signs in with this program. So we won't be putting old poles and signs out there and then swapping them in 2 months. We're gonna do it all at the same time to save costs. And if the board approves this plan, the service would be implemented on January 2nd, 2018. So staff recommends that the board approve the West Salem replacement plan and associated Title VI equity analysis.
Do you have any questions? Yes, Director Evans?
I have some comments. I have one question. On 27, are you going to have a smaller bus?
To start out, it'll be a 35-foot bus.
Okay.
In the future, I don't know the answer to that. It's something we're considering, but to start out on January 2nd, it'll be
Okay.
35.
Is that the smaller of the two buses we have?
We have
Okay.
35 and we have 40, so.
Yeah, because Burley Hill and up that hill,
Mhm.
and to stop on the hill, and there's really no parking there.
Right.
That could be an issue for you.
Yeah, we tested it with 35 and 40-foot buses just to know what our options, where there'd be tight turns, et cetera. But
Okay. Another comment. Orchard Heights,
Mhm.
coming in the morning,
Mhm.
that bus will back up probably 3 lights. So your scheduling for, that'd be number 16, is going to be off in the morning.
Yeah. In order to, we actually, for especially one of the trips in the morning, we have them leave downtown 5 minutes early, just so they can start getting through the route earlier. And then normally we would have the Route 6 depart at 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. So the 16 turns into the 6 downtown. We'd have it depart at 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. We plan on actually moving that to depart at 7:05 and 8:05, just so that the operator can have that 5 minutes of recovery time.
Perfect.
additional.
And the other one is going to be Eola in the morning down to Edgewater. It's
Yeah,
gonna-
for both the 26 and the 27, we have about 45 minutes of planned time in service and then 15 minutes of recovery time, which is a little bit higher than our standard. So
Yeah.
during those peak times, there will still be plenty of time for
Perfect.
recovery.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Director Lincoln?
Did you contact the folks at Capitol Manor or have a table there or anything?
Not for this proposal. So the Capitol Manor and Kingwood West and Capitol Manor are the two, for everyone so they know, are the two places we used to go in with the 17. And we recently removed service because of a request from Kingwood West and a lack of service at Capitol Manor.
Okay, so you never had much service, or,
If anything, if we were going to have service in there, it would have made more sense to use the 17 to do that. But not the new routes that we've added. But there was very little ridership there. And there's still, I should note, at the bottom of the hill, it's about a 2 or 3 minute walk from the door of Capitol Manor, and they have 15-minute bus service.
yeah,
So, and we're also looking into adding a shelter at the bottom there, just to make it easier to wait. But
for workers particularly, I suppose.
yeah, 15-minute service going straight to downtown.
Okay, thanks.
Director Kelly?
And I think for the residents of Capitol Manor, there have been some changes in their in-house transportation, because I have a luncheon group with a 90-year-old from Capitol Manor, and she was able to come to the luncheon thing last month because they've changed some of their policies.
Oh, good.
So, but it would be helpful to be close for staff who are there.
Yeah,
Director
that's
Bush?
where the Route 17
Yeah,
comes in
yeah.
handy. Yeah.
I noticed you had an outreach for the neighborhood associations of West Salem. How did those discussions go?
I wasn't actually at that. It was, I don't know if you guys want to speak to it or.
Yes, I attended the West Salem Neighborhood Association with over 100 people in attendance. We had a presentation showing them the new routes and the new stops. There were a few questions, but in general, no big problems with it. We gave out the survey that we were publicizing at that point, and we did receive some surveys back from that meeting. So we view it as a successful event.
Okay, so there wasn't that,
Contentious.
Okay. Was just curious as how, if there was anybody who was pretty adverse to losing the connector rather than going to the next one.
It would have shown up in the comments in our report, and there were some people, but
We had a few people that, a lot of people really liked the new fixed routes. There were some people that said, can we have the new fixed routes and have the connector? And that would cost a lot more money. We don't have the resources for that. But for the most part, whenever we got any kind of feedback about, well, I can't walk that far, or this won't work for me, we always directed them, well, we have our Lyft program, we have the shop and ride, and people are really happy to learn about that. So that's always but most people that we talked to, I think there was only 5 out of the 170 or so comments that even said, can you also keep the demand responsive portion?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I was cornered a couple times in that meeting, and their comment was the two folks were close to Eola, and they were wanting to make sure that we didn't cut that out, and we haven't, so that's nice.
Good.
another comment was about the vehicle size. They wanted to see if we were still considering smaller vehicles, and we are considering that.
Other questions? Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's taken a lot of work, and it's given us some, both the connector and this new service has given us some factual information that we can develop a program on, which is good. So, do we have a motion?
I move the board approve the West Salem replacement plan and the associated Title VI equity analysis.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, and thanks for the work of staff in putting this together. Our next item is the fiscal year 2017 annual security report.
Thank you. Karen Garcia, our Security and Emergency Management Manager, will make the presentation.
He's a bit taller than I am, for sure. Good evening, President Krebs and members of the board. As the general manager indicated, I'm here to present the fiscal year 17 annual security report for you this evening. So the district is committed to providing a safe and secure environment for everyone who uses our property and our service. That includes our employees, general members of the public, and the passengers who use the bus service. And we, in order to be able to provide a safe and secure environment for those activities, we have to regulate conduct on our property to ensure that we address any unsafe behavior or any law violations that take place. So that is the goal of the security team, is to address our customer needs and to make sure that it remains a safe and secure environment for everyone who uses the service. We have a multi-agency security team, which includes our partnership with the Salem Police Department. We have an ongoing intergovernmental agreement with them, with the downtown bike team, and they regularly are visitors of the downtown transit center and assist us with our customers' needs. And then we also partner with a private security company to provide our full-time security staff, and that is G4S Secure Solutions. So the security team's responsibilities are to provide customer service, as I indicated, to the folks that are using our service. We also respond to concerns, whether they are related to our service or not. We have a lot of people that ask directions once they get to the downtown transit center. How do I get to this place of business or this area of downtown? So we're always there to provide that assistance. We also analyze our security statistics and use that information to enhance the safety initiatives and the security initiatives that we have at our transit centers, and that's both downtown and at Kaiser. A strong presence is always important when you are trying to reduce the number of negative behaviors on any piece of property. And so having those security staff here from the time that we open in the morning until we close at night at 9:30 is really important, because people know that we're watching. We're there to assist, but we're also there to try to make sure that things are managed the way that they need to be managed. And people see the folks. The security staff, as you saw in the picture, are in the bright yellow reflective uniforms, and so they're very visible when they're out there on the platform. We also have a responsibility to develop policies and procedures related to safety and security for the district, and then educate our members of the public to those policies and procedures. The security team is responsible for enforcing codes and regulations. That's why we partner with the Salem Police Department to make sure that we are addressing any kind of law violations. And then the G4S security staff, their primary role is to liaison with the police department and then enforce the district ordinances on our property. And we have to maintain a safe environment for all of our stakeholders. Like I said, we have riders, employees, and other members of the public who are on the transit centers, and we're always there to try to make sure that people have the resources that they need, the assistance that they need, and that it's a safe and secure environment for everyone involved. So now for the data. So on these graphs, I'm showing blue as fiscal year 16, so that would be a year ago's data, and the red is fiscal year 17. And this first graph shows the Downtown Transit Center on the left and the Kaiser Transit Center on the right. This graph indicates our customer service contacts, which appear to be down at the Downtown Transit Center compared to the year before, but we have a number of different entities in the organization that do customer service contacts. We have our wonderful customer service staff that are in the lobby there to answer questions for our riders. We also have our transit host program, so those folks are on the platform 8-9 hours a day, I believe. The operators are always getting stopped and asked questions about routes, and we also have supervisors out there on the island as well. So there are plenty of opportunities for our riders and customers to ask customer service related questions, not just the security staff. But another reason why I believe that the numbers are down is because there haven't been huge significant changes over the last year. A lot of people are getting familiar with our service, so they know where their connections are, and we have monitors on the transit center that let them know when the next route will be coming through for their destination. The next slide indicates our security bus rides. So as I indicated before, it's important for us to have a security presence on the transit centers. It's also important for us to be out in the system on those buses. We do not have a lot of coverage out there, but we do have some coverage, and we try to get a broad spectrum of all the different routes. We get a security officer on different routes throughout the system at different times of the day, so that people can see that we're not just worried about what's happening at the transit centers, but that we're also out there not only to enforce the ordinances and rules, but to provide assistance to the customers on the buses, and then to offer assistance to the operators where we can if needed. The next slide is about our exclusions and warnings, written warnings that were issued over the last year. Again, blue is last year and red is this year. On the left is the exclusions that were issued from our service. So an exclusion is authorized anytime a violation of the ordinance takes place or a law violation has taken place. We use kind of a progressive discipline approach in a lot of cases where we educate our folks, our passengers and riders, and then we will step it up to a written warning and then issue an exclusion if we can't get the behavior compliance that we need. So the exclusions there on the left, normally exclusions are written for things like disorderly conduct or drug and alcohol violations, for instance, open containers on the property, theft, trespassing, things of that nature. The written warnings are generally for things that are less severe. So if we, for instance, have someone who repeatedly smokes on the property in an undesignated area and we've given them verbal warnings and educated them about where the designated area is, we may choose to do a written warning if we can't get compliance through those lesser means. This next slide is the ordinance warnings. So like I said, we issue a lot of verbal education to our customers to let them know what the expectations are while are riding on the service and being on the property of the district. So on the left is the Downtown Transit Center again, Kaiser's on the right. It's basically public education. Some people that come to use the service are not aware of what the rules are. So when it's a minor infraction, we try to educate folks and try to get their compliance just through that verbal warning, and that's what this slide shows. A breakdown of that information is in this slide. Now this shows just fiscal year 17. The colors indicate the different quarters of the year. So the yellow, the first quarter on the left is the summer quarter, and then red or orange is the fall, the blue is the winter, and then the green, furthest to the right, is the spring quarter. So that April, May, June, the last quarter of the fiscal year. So you can see that smoking continues to be a regular verbal warning on the property. A lot of people just don't know where the designated area is, or they choose not to use the designated area or the public sidewalks. So this is a regular occurrence. We try to stay on the smoking issue as much as possible because it does interfere with the comfort for other passengers, and that's why that number is high. The other category, which is second in line there, addresses a number of different types of violations, including things like private vehicles driving through the transit center, which happens more often than what we would like, but it does happen. We also have panhandling. Sometimes folks are soliciting on the property. All these things are against the ordinance, but not huge violations where we would want to issue an exclusion to an individual. And then the third item there is the bike riding. We do have a lot of folks that ride through the property on their bike. This next slide is the incident reports that were submitted by our private security companies. So on the left, Downtown Transit Center, on the right, Kaiser. Obviously, we have a lot less activity at Kaiser, so a lot less incident reports have been submitted. For this slide, these are only showing the incident reports that are submitted by our security staff. It does not include reports that involve the police. So these are just reports that were for activity addressed by the security staff only. This next slide shows the breakout by quarter. A little hard to read. We have a number of different categories there, so I'm going to move to the top three. So our most common incidences during the previous fiscal year 15-16, were graffiti, disorderly conduct, and medical emergencies. They switched up just a bit this year. Medical emergencies were on the top of the list this past fiscal year. They were up from 31 to 46, so we had a fairly decent increase in that. And when I say medical emergencies, it's people that have a medical situation and they're asking for us to call EMS, or maybe it's a trip and fall. Mostly minor situations that just require us to call EMS and get some more advanced assistance for them. The second highest this year was graffiti, which fortunately was down from the previous year by a few reports, so that's a good sign. And loitering was up significantly this last year, and I really believe that that was because of the harsh winter that we had. Some of the community opportunities for staying out of the cold and rain were not as available this year, and so people tended to take refuge in our customer service lobby, and some were there to use the service and just stayed much longer than what they needed to. Some were there because they had nowhere else to go. So we work closely with the other community partners, like the 50+ Center, who opened up when it was the cold parts of the winter, the library, and help people get directed to the right route to get to those warming shelters instead of loitering here at the transit center. This next slide is our requests for police response. The majority of our calls for the police are to the Salem Police Department because most of our service area is in their jurisdiction, and most of the calls are for activities that are happening here at the Downtown Transit Center. But we do have a handful of things that happen in Marion County and Polk County's jurisdiction. We also have an incident once in a while out at the Kaiser Transit Center, and we have Kaiser Police come out. We do not have a formalized agreement with any of those agencies, but Salem Police, of course, we have that intergovernmental agreement. So the numbers are much higher at the Downtown Transit Center because we have that access to our police partners there. This slide is a breakdown by quarter of the activity that involved police intervention, where we asked the police to come down and assist. Trespassing was our number one again this year. The number, it looks very high, in the high 60s, but we have had some individuals who have been caught trespassing on numerous occasions. So this does not indicate the number of people that trespassed. And trespass is when a person is excluded and then they return back to the property or choose to ride the bus when they're not allowed to be there. But we have had a couple individuals that have violated that multiple times. So the number looks really high, but it's not indicative of the number of people who have actually trespassed on the property. So the top three for this fiscal year for police activity type incidences were the same as they were the previous year. Trespassing was our number one. Non-chariot type incidences were number two, and those included things that really were not related to us. These are activities where a member of the public called for a police response at the transit center, or the police took a police action not related to us on our property, which sometimes happens. The third most popular incident, which involved the police, was disorderly conduct. So our disorderly conduct was down for G4S response only, but it was up for those involving the police. And I'll talk about that in this next slide. So disorderly conduct is unruly or threatening behavior that happens on the property or on board the buses. We had a decrease over the last year, which is good. When you added the G4S numbers and the police-involved incidences together, the numbers were actually down, so that was a good thing. But we did have 4 assault incidences this year, which was up from the previous year. 3 out of those 4 were between members of the public or passengers and did not involve us, so that would be a physical altercation between 2 citizens. Only 1 of those assault type incidences involved one of our staff, and it was when a passenger spit on one of our operators. So this is a common picture of the downtown transit center, our security staff, contracted security staff, and our police department partners working with a member of the public, someone here to ride our service. You'll see them working together quite a bit if you spend much time at the downtown transit center. The last couple of slides are about continuous improvement. We're always looking for ways to increase safety and security for our customers and employees and to enhance our emergency management practices. So the first initiative for this year is our customer education campaign, and we will use this campaign to increase customer awareness about how they can help us make the system more efficient and let them know what the behavior expectations are, hopefully to get those verbal warnings down. The next is the development of our continuity of operations plan, which we are quite a ways through that project already, and that continuity of operation plan will help us be prepared for any kind of disaster that we may face in the future, and that could be something as minor as a few hours power loss at one of our locations, all the way up to a regional or area type of disaster like a Cascadia earthquake. So that will help us recover from a disaster and get back in the business of getting people where they need to go. The third thing is we are continuing to work with our emergency management efforts, and an indication of that and an example of that is our activation of the Emergency Operations Center for the August 21st solar eclipse that we had here in Salem. It was a great event for us to learn and practice activating our EOC, where we bring representatives from all the different parts of the organization into the same room so that we can respond quickly with knowledge with all the right people at the table so that we can address and respond to anything that might happen that connects to the service or impacts the delivery of the service. And then we are working currently to update our visitor policy and refresh our access badges to help increase security and awareness of all of our staff. Everyone that comes into our secure spaces should be badged so that we know if that person belongs there. It will be a great effort for us to make sure that everyone has a badge on them and that staff can quickly see by whether or not a person has a badge or not, if they've checked in properly and if they're supposed to be where they are. And then lastly, we're going to continue with our staff education as we do annually to make sure that people have the tools that they need to de-escalate situations, because we do have people that are under the influence of life and sometimes having a bad day, and if we can de-escalate those situations before they get out of hand, then that's better for everyone involved. And I will end offering any questions that there might be.
Director Kelly.
Is not bike riding and skateboarding not allowed in the core of the downtown area?
That's correct. On the sidewalks, that's a city ordinance.
Yeah, so having that is a little bit, having that as sort of a high incidence on the bus mall is a little bit of a concern to me. And I've noticed that there used to be a lot more signs posted that reminded people that they were supposed to walk their bikes downtown or pick up their skateboards. And so I'm wondering if we could work with the city to get a little bit more visibility on that. When I worked in this building prior to being on the transit, not in this exact building, but in this spot, prior to being on the transit board, my boss's wife was hit by a bicyclist and it broke her leg. And that's one of the things. And I think I've noticed that there really isn't as much signage as there used to be in the downtown area. And I think we need to work with the city on that. Sort of expand it, and then we might not have so many problems with skateboarding and bike riding if they're used to not doing it downtown.
And I know that the downtown bike officers are the ones that primarily enforce that on the city sidewalks, so we've already got that partnership in place to work with them to look at the signage and see if an increase is needed.
Yeah, the visibility I've noticed that there used to be like something on almost every corner that said, bike riding was outlawed. And it's one of the signs that I'd like to see more of.
Director Evans.
Yeah, I attended a West Salem Business Association meeting where Sheriff Garten talked about a liaison group between officers and mental health and an outreach person, depending on whether it's in West Salem or out in the county. And do we have something like that in Marion County where if we have a client who has a mental health issue causing a scene or something on a bus, do we intervene by just calling police, or is there a team that can?
To my knowledge, I'll share with you what I know.
What do you
The
know?
Salem Police Department has a mental health team. They've partnered with Marion County and Polk County both.
Okay.
And so they have officers who have special mental health training who have been assigned to that task force, if you will. They have a Salem Police Department officer who works side by side with a Marion County Sheriff's deputy. They also have a Salem Police Department officer who works side by side with a Polk County deputy. And so if there's any mental health issues that happen in West Salem, that Salem police officer and the Polk County deputy will respond together. The same thing happens here. And we've had that partnership where an officer and a Marion County deputy from the mental health team have responded to the downtown transit center or out in the system to help us address a mental health crisis.
Oh, good. Have our operators and folks been trained to know that?
They would go through security or dispatch
Got it.
because that's their normal protocol for getting a police response or assistance. And then dispatch or security would make that happen by contacting our police partners.
Okay, yeah, because incarcerations have gone down in Polk County for mental health issues
That's a good thing.
significantly because of that team over there. So I think it's something that we need to encourage.
It's definitely helpful because a lot of times a breakdown is caused by some root issue, and we're trying to address the behavior. But a lot of
Right.
times when the mental health folks come out, they find out that it's a homelessness problem or a resources problem, and they're able to get that person connected to the community resource that they need instead of making an arrest. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, and I did have a question about the warming
Yes.
centers. Let's say there's someone in our, right here, and we don't have room for them, or we want to move them to a safer place. Do we give them a bus pass?
Typically, when the warming shelters are activated, if you will, by the city of Salem, they announce what centers are open, what the locations are, and what the hours of those warming stations are. And then if someone indicates to us that they need to get to a warming station, then we will let them ride for free. That's our business practice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Director Rogers?
You had a lot of good information, thank you. You brought
Thank
up
you.
4 questions to me. Regarding the most common incidences, if there's a heart attack on the bus or a stroke or something, maybe Alan can answer this better. What percentage of our drivers have CPR, first aid training?
Our drivers are not CPR and first aid trained. The supervisors who respond to the buses are. Their training tells them to contact dispatch, and then dispatch will get EMS, because typically EMS will get there faster. So their protocol is to contact dispatch, and then dispatch will get the resources there to them.
I just know from personal experience, minutes matter. So, I'd like to see more opportunities for drivers to learn some basic first aid to help out.
That's
As well as
definitely
calling.
something we can discuss.
And also, we talked about, we have an agreement with the Salem Police, but not Kaiser or Polk or Marion.
Correct.
Is there any feelers going out there?
We have a good relationship with them. We just don't have that formal IGA where we have direct access. I know that you are new to the board, but on that intergovernmental agreement allows us to call an officer directly with Salem Police Department during certain hours of the day instead of having to call non-emergent dispatch and get an officer that way. So it's a great relationship because they're already in the downtown core. We don't need the services of the counties or Kaiser as much. And so having that on-call type of relationship and the expense that comes with it is not as vital.
And they'll
As
still
long as we
come.
have that relationship where when we do need their assistance, they're willing to respond, and all of them have been great about responding to us.
Yeah, I kind of thought that. The security team, do they stay here on the transit property, or do they ever get on the bus and ride along with the?
They do get on the buses and ride, but we always leave a minimum of 1 security officer at every transit center. So we typically staff the downtown transit center with 2 people. So if one person goes out on a bus, the second person will stay here at the downtown transit center.
Okay. And being spit on is never fun. It's happened to me. How did the driver handle it? Was it?
Well, the driver reported it, as they should have, and maintained their composure so that it
That's
didn't
what I was
escalate the
wondering.
situation. We got the resources to them, we got it reported to the police. And so I think in the end, even though it was an unfortunate situation, it was handled very well.
That's good. That's what I wanted to hear.
Good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Director Bush?
On the opposite of the warming stations, do we have cooling air policies during the summer?
We actually do, and we had a number of 100-degree days this summer where the city did open up cooling stations around the city.
So we will transport riders to those if needed.
Yes, if someone tells us that that's where they need to go, then we will get them on a bus and get them pointed in the right direction.
So we don't, even though it's air conditioned in our lobby, that we prefer that they go to a cooling station.
Right.
Okay. And then I had,
Because at the cooling stations, they have
They have water.
facilities, they have water,
right,
there.
right. They can help with other needs as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. And another question was, on the customer education campaign, do you actually have classes for the customers, or is this something that you go through after someone may have done something that they show they didn't know the rules?
That campaign is just at its start, so I won't speak too much about it, but a lot of it is going to be messaging. We're working very closely with the marketing department. They're kind of leading that campaign, and so it'll include signage, social media messaging, and things like that to help people know what the expectations are and how to best use our service. Even little things that will help us be more efficient, like having your fare ready when you board so that the bus can keep moving along.
Okay. I just thought of the video that was made, a bus coming to a stop near you, right? We did that one? That's a great one. That's all.
So if there are no other questions, staff recommends that the board accept the fiscal year 2017 annual security report.
So moved.
And moved
Second.
and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank
We'll
you.
move on to the next
Thank you.
item. Move on to the next item, which is to execute a contract for the purchase of fixed route transit vehicles.
Thank you. Greg Thompson, our maintenance manager, will present the staff report.
President Krebs and members of the board, thank you for your time this evening. I'm here to ask that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Gillig for the purchase of 12 fixed route transit vehicles for the Cherriots fixed route service for a not to exceed amount of $6,700,833. SAMTD's current fleet for delivery of the fixed route service consists of 64 ADA lift-equipped vehicles. Regular replacement of these vehicles is necessary to ensure safe, efficient delivery of the service. As part of the district's overall capital planning efforts, SAMTD is committed to ensure our vehicles are replaced at a schedule consistent with industry best practices. The 12 vehicles scheduled to be replaced are approaching 15 years of age, which far exceeds the 12-year useful life benchmark set by the Federal Transit Administration. The contract price is based upon the Washington State Price Agreement, procured under procedures set by the Washington Department of Transportation's Public Transit Division. In accordance with these procedures, SAMTD staff issued a formal request for quotes for heavy-duty Category A vehicles. Of the two responses that we received, Gillig was evaluated as the best value, in part based on the expedited delivery schedule and the lowest cost per vehicle. The order will be for 6 40-foot buses and 6 35-foot buses. The fiscal impacts are each bus has a price tag. The 40-foot buses are $558,379, and a 35-foot vehicle is $553,268. On page 84, there's a chart that outlines the funding sources and the match amounts through several grants that'll help pay for these buses. And any of the remaining funds will be used as rollover for bus purchases in the future.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Director Kelly.
A couple of things. It is not stated in here what kind of a system is running it. Is it CNG or is it clean diesel?
It is CNG.
I'm glad of that because we're getting under the House bill. I think we have some things that we would probably not like to buy buses and then have not be in compliance with requirements. And then the other thing, having a very adamant bus rider in my household at times. The front seats of the bus are going to be more comfortable and the back seats are going to be more damage-proof.
Are you talking about it similar to what we currently have?
Yeah.
Yes, that is the direction I think we're going. Yes.
It's the direction that I always want because older people have more fragile situations and having those plastic hard things are not fun.
Our current vehicles are spec'd with cloth seats throughout, and there's a half inch of cushion on the front portion and a quarter or a little less in the back portions. So it is a little more comfortable in the front.
Yes, they need to be for our customers.
Other questions or comments? Oh,
Yeah, in the
Trevor.
work session, we talked about delivery date. It's like a year out, right?
Well, what we're looking at right now, if everything goes as planned, Gillig has proposed that we would have buses in May of next year.
Okay. All right, so it's sooner than a year.
They really did some work. I'm anxious
Thank you.
to meet those deadlines.
Director Kelly?
So we're tagging along with a Washington State order or something, is that how?
It's not really a tag along. It's a separate purchase using
Yeah.
the Washington State Price Agreement that has already been vetted through the procurement procedures.
Okay, so,
Director Bush?
So our funding sources, this is not all from, like, say, just the general fund. We do have some through our STIP money, through some federal fundings. And so this is not just a saying, okay, we're going to buy buses. We've had to do some research. We've had to pull resources together so that this can work. We work with our Salem-Kaiser Area Transportation Study and the COGS to, it's not just us doing this, right? Does that make sense?
That might be a little bit out of my purview.
So, yeah, every bus purchase is at least 80% paid for by federal funds. The only local money we use is to match when we can't use state money to match. So you can see, we'll just do an example, the FY 175339 formula. So 80% is federal, 20% is the match. So the grant amount at 666,565, that's the federal money. The match amount of 166,641 is our local general fund, and for the total for that portion.
And I just brought it up to help our listeners, our viewers understand there is a semi-complicated process to go through to get buses, and it's not, say yes today and we get them tomorrow. There's a long process we have to go through.
And that's actually,
There is. We met with several internal working groups that all have an interest in what kind of vehicles we buy and how they're equipped, and vetted those, and we built specifications for the bus off of those. We got other ideas and input, and there'll be continued input as we go through the bus build. We're hoping to have a pilot bus to look at how it's laid out and give some input before we actually get ours. So it'll continue.
Thank you.
Other questions? Director Kelly?
I move the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Gillig LLC for the purchase of 12 fixed route transit buses for Cherriots fixed route service for a not to exceed amount of $6,700,883.
Second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And our next item.
Thank you.
And thank you. Jumping a little too fast here and not thanking our presenters. Approval of the STFAC reallocation recommendation.
Thank you. And Ted Stonecliffe, Transit Planner 2 and STF Administrator, will present the report.
President Krebs and members of the board. First of all, Tanya DeHart, our chair of our STF Advisory Committee, was unable to make it tonight, so I'm giving the recommendation from the committee, but this is coming from your advisory committee. Tonight we're bringing a recommendation from the committee to reallocate a small amount of funds, $655 from the city of Silverton, and we're recommending, or they are recommending that to be reallocated to the city of Woodburn. These were funds that were allocated 4 years ago in the 2013 to 15 biennium. Originally, it was a $5,000 allocation approved for scheduling software and a transit shelter for the city of Silverton Senior Center. They procured the software first, and it came in a lot higher than they were expecting, and so they were hoping to be able to use the remainder for the shelter, but their priorities changed and no longer are wanting a shelter there at the senior center. So the funds came back to the committee and now to you to reallocate. In the memo, there's a table that lists the ranking of the recipients of STF funds that was set by the advisory committee in February of this year. As you can see, City of Woodburn was number 2. Number 1 was Cherriots. the committee decided to allocate it to the city of Woodburn because they have not received a full requested amount. You can see the full requested amount was received by SAMTD. However, city of Woodburn is about $29,000 short of their original ask. And so that was the major reason for reallocating it to city of Woodburn. In Appendix A, a copy of the meeting minutes from the advisory committee meeting on September 5th is included. And we're bringing that recommendation to you tonight. The STFAC recommends the board approve the reallocation of $655 in STF funds from the city of Silverton to the city of Woodburn. And I can answer any questions that you have at this time.
Any questions? Do we have a motion? Oh, question?
Is there a way that this small amount of money could be just set aside until you reallocate it, until you do in the next?
That's something that we definitely want to work on for the future.
Yes, please.
At this point, any amount of funds has to be allocated by the STF agency, which is the board of directors. But in the future, we're going to look at a method of doing that beforehand so that it's pre-approved and we can use the committee's recommendations.
Other questions? Or do we have a motion?
I move the board approve the reallocation of $655 in STF funds from the city of Silverton to the city of Woodburn as recommended by the STFAC.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Our next, we're now into informational items, and our first item is the performance report for the 2017 fiscal year.
And I'd ask Matt Bergeron to please come back up.
Hello again. So tonight I'm going to present on the fiscal year 17 annual performance report, which looks like this in your packet. And actually, before we go into the details, I just want to take a step back and talk a little bit about the report and how it's different from last year. So in the past, we've pretty much reported on boardings, revenue hours, and revenue miles for the fiscal year compared to the previous fiscal year. Now with our new service guidelines document, we're finishing up developing, and our annual service change process, we're starting to expand what the annual performance report is and what it does. So just a little bit of context about the process. This report will be used as the foundation, the beginning of the analysis for the service changes, which will take effect in September of 2018. So that sounds like it's far away, but it's actually coming up, 11 months away. So what happens now is we'll take this performance report. So how are the routes doing? Which routes are not running on time? Which routes have lower ridership than we expect? And we'll use that to then go and do our needs assessment. So we'll take that information, we'll start looking at demographic shifts, we'll look at new businesses that have come online and gone away, we'll talk about new developments, we'll reach out to the community and figure out what the needs are, and from there we'll create a needs assessment report. From that point, we develop our service plan. So we say, given our fiscal direction, given our how much money we believe we'll have in the next year, what can we accomplish? How can we improve reliability? How can we improve productivity, et cetera? Should we make changes to routes? Should we advertise routes? There's a number of different strategies we can take. And from there, we'll do more outreach, develop a final plan, which will come to the board in May of 2018, and then it'll be in September of 2018 that it'll be approved. So I just wanted to give the full context of where this report fits into the whole spectrum. Additionally, with the service guidelines, our new service guidelines, they're not 100% finalized, but in the draft we have now, we've established 5 service goals: productivity, efficiency, reliability, safety, and comfort. So with this annual report, in the past, we've pretty much just focused on the productivity. This time we've added in the reliability as well, looking at the on-time performance. And then in future editions of the annual service report, we'll go into more detail on safety, comfort, efficiency. Some of that is going to require when we have our new CAT-AVL systems for real-time tracking of the buses, and when we have our new automatic passenger counters, it'll give us more detailed information on where our buses are overcrowding, where we have good reliability, where we have poor reliability. So that's the direction of where this report's heading, but it's meant to take a look at the whole system and let us know how we're doing. From there's 2 parts of the report that we have right now. One is just looking at the overall numbers from last year comparing to the year before. So have our boardings increased or decreased? Have the revenue hour changed at all? And the second part is taking a snapshot, a route-by-route snapshot of our system. So for this report, we looked at April of 2017. So I'll get more into that as we get to that section. So starting with the service overview, this is similar to what you've seen in past years. We're looking at fiscal year 16 and comparing those to fiscal year 17 numbers to see the changes in revenue hours, revenue miles, and boardings. And we go by service. So we have local, regional, lift, and shop and ride. So starting with local, we've had a 5.5% increase in revenue hours and a 2.8% increase in revenue miles. One part of that is the 15X, which ran for the entire fiscal year. That was not in existence in fiscal year 16. And the second is the reliability improvements we made in January of 2017, where we split a number of routes and added more revenue hours. That's a reason for the increase. Boardings per day are down 1%. So that's much better than the 10 or so we were down the year before. For the last 4 months of the fiscal year, we were actually up in boardings, but this is looking at the full year. So we were down, and now we were working our way up. And now we're at 6 months of increases in a row. So that's a positive sign. The Cherriots regional service, this includes the 1X and 2X buses. It also includes our new regional express buses, the 10X, the 50X, and the Polk County Flex. It also includes, this is the whole fiscal year, the old CARTS deviated fixed routes and zone routes. So this is all that data combined. Revenue hours are up about 6.6%, and that is partly because of the last September we made some changes to the schedules on the CARTS buses to improve reliability. There's also some fluctuations that happen with revenue miles and revenue hours on those demand responsive systems, the deviated fixed routes, most of which are now fixed route systems. So in future years, we should see that more stable. And then like we've seen in the previous year, the boardings on the regional express service have continued to drop. This year they were down 10.5% over the previous year. Cherriots Shop and Ride, formerly known as the Red Line. These numbers look really big, but they're actually pretty small. We've had an increase in boardings of 16%, which is about 5 additional boardings per day. It's a pretty small service, about 30 people a day that ride. So with the increase in boardings, it's a demand responsive service. So that means when you have more people getting picked up, you have to go to more houses. So we've had a corresponding increase in revenue hours and revenue miles with that increase. Similar with Lyft, our paratransit service, but the opposite. This is continuing a trend that we've had since the mobility assessment program started. We've had an overall decrease of 5.2% on the Lyft service, and then we've had a corresponding decrease in revenue hours and revenue miles. And those decreases aren't as high or aren't as large as the boardings per day, but there was a decrease on those as well. And then this one is an overall number, but it's actually just focusing on April 2017. So the way we're currently measuring on-time performance, we don't have, until we have the comprehensive CAT-AVL system that can track on-time performance on a regular basis at all time points on all routes, we're using, one of the methods we use to measure on-time performance is looking at the end of the route in April and in October. So we started with this year in April, looked at when the buses arrive downtown, how that differs from their scheduled arrival time. If it was up to 5 minutes late, that's considered on time. Later than that is considered late. So it's just a proxy. It's not comprehensive. It's not as good as the CAT-AVL, but it does give us a sense of how things are going on the road if we need to look into a certain route more comprehensively and spend more resources on it. So our target for this is 85% on time. For our local service, we're at 92. And for our regional service, we're at 87 in the month of April. one thing I will say is with CAT AVL, we'll get not just the end of the route, but we'll get all those detailed time points all times of the day. So I'm guessing these numbers will go down. This is what we've heard from every transit agency that's had CAT AVL. Once they get it, they get much more comprehensive data, and the numbers are a little different. So this is just a snapshot. It's not comprehensive. So now going into the route by route snapshots, as I kind of alluded to before, with the overall services, we generally keep those the same. We have a paratransit service, we have our local fixed route service, so we can easily compare year to year. With the individual routes, it's more difficult because the route changes. We had the new 15X route, that route went away. We split some of the routes downtown to help with on-time performance, et cetera. So it makes it really difficult to compare year to year when there's changes to routes mid-year. So what we're actually doing for these, to get into those details still, is to do route snapshots using data from April. And now every year we're going to use data from April and use that as the comparison. So we're always using the same month, so we don't run into the issues with the seasonal fluctuations in the route productivity. So I wanted to just start by talking about overall ridership. This isn't something we normally talk about. Normally we focus on efficiency. So some buses have a lot more riders, but we go on from like 60-minute service to 30 to 15 to help get those riders along without overcrowding. So we tend to look at that number, but I think sometimes it's good to take a step back and actually go and look at what are our routes carrying the most number of people. And as you can tell, by far it is Route 11. So yes, this is a very long route, but it is definitely, we have over 2,000 of our about 13,000 riders happening on this one route. So of the top 6 or so routes, Route 11, 19, 21, 2, 5, 3, and 17, all but one are our 15-minute service. And then we have a 30-minute service on here. And if you go farther down to the bottom, you'll see a lot of our neighborhood circulators. You'll see the 14, the 12, the West Salem Connector, the 22, the Library Loop. But this just gives you a sense of scale of where most of our riders are riding the bus. Now going into productivity, the way we measure productivity is looking at boardings per revenue hour. So that tells you is a general sense of about how full the bus is on average. So our route that's the most productive is Route 3. Route that's least productive was Route 15X. And for this, we're just looking at our corridor routes. So for our main fixed routes, we have what we call the corridor routes, which are traveling along the main corridors, our busiest streets. And then we have our neighborhood shuttles, which are more of the circulators in the neighborhoods. So our target boardings per hour for the corridor routes are 20 boardings per hour. Every route that you see in green is above that standard, above that target, and everything in red is below that target. So we have about 6 routes that are above that target right now. We have about 6 or so routes that are pretty close to that target, and then we have about 5 or 6 routes that are significantly below that target. The one that's has the least productivity is the 15X, and that is already gone because the state is not funding it this year. But one thing we'll be looking at for this upcoming service change is looking closely at the 16, the 6, the 17, the 9, and look at why are these routes not meeting our target? How can we help these routes meet our target? Looking at the neighborhood shuttle productivity, our target for neighborhood shuttles is 10 boardings an hour. So none of our routes are meeting that at the moment. The 22 and 23 are pretty close. The connector, the 12 and the 14 are significantly less. So as you just approved, the connector will be replaced with the changed 16, the 26 and the 27. So we'll have those numbers in April next year to monitor and see how that ridership has changed. And then we'll want to look more closely, especially at the 12 and the 14. Regional Express productivity. So we launched the new Regional Express routes for the contracted service in May of 2017. So we don't have any April data for those. So for this report, we just have 1X and 2X at the moment. The 1X is above our productivity target of 10 boardings per revenue hour. The 2X is significantly below. That service will no longer be operated by Cherriots after December. It's moving over to another contractor. So that will not be something that will appear on the next report. And just to clarify, the 1X numbers there are just our 5 round trips. It's not the 8 round trips that SMART provides. And now overall on-time performance. So as I mentioned before, we measured on-time performance in April, just looking at the end of the routes, not every single time point of each time, but just the end of the route, we did 3 samples for every single trip. What we found was that most of our routes are exceeding our target of 85% on-time trips throughout the day. We had 4 routes that weren't meeting our target. For routes 9 and 7, we already implemented new solutions just a few weeks ago to try to help with that on-time performance. So we'll be monitoring that in October and see if those changes have helped. And for Route 11, we'll be making changes in January is the plan. But we'll continue to look at, when we look at the on-time performance, we're looking at what things can we do during the off-cycle changes in January and May, and which things need bigger changes that'll wait till the annual change in September. So a number of these items they're close enough to 85%, there's small enough changes needed to happen that we were able to get them done now instead of having to wait until next year. When looking at on-time performance, we also just narrow in on the PM peak, and how we define that is from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. So that is when when buses tend to slow down a lot. There's a lot of traffic on the road. It's hard to keep to schedule. There's a lot of riders. So we wanted to set a special target for that. There's one thing that can happen with some agencies is you might have 90% on time, but really what you have is 50% on time in the peak and then 100% the rest of the day. So it looks like the route's doing really well, but when people are trying to ride, getting home, it's not doing so well. So we expect it to be lower in the PM peak, and we have our target set at 75%, which is lower than the overall 85. But we did want to have that target so we could figure out if there's any routes that are really not doing well during the peak. So the numbers at the bottom are pretty similar. The only difference is we have Route 8 in there, because there's one trip in particular that tends to run a little late. But the Route 11 during the PM peak breaks through that 75% standard. So we'll continue to monitor this and work on changes for January, May, and then eventually September if bigger changes are necessary to help get all of our routes to meet our targets. And that is the end of the annual performance report.
You have any questions? Having worked on that type of reports myself, I know it's real hard to come up with the statistics so you can make responsible evaluations of the system. And
Right.
I think you're doing a good job at it.
Thanks.
Oh, Director Kelly.
I know that it's not good to have boardings going down, but the 1% is a much better lower boarding than what I heard on OPB for TriMet, I believe, for the TriMet bus system. I think it was in the
If I remember, I think they have the Max and the West train and buses. I think they're actually on par with us for buses, but their Max and West rides are dropping more like 5 or 6%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But it's their overall system, sort of like ours. And the other thing is on the Cherriots lift, boardings are down, and that's a good thing. That's our most expensive service.
Right.
And we are working with clients to make sure that they know how to access the fixed route oftener if they're able to do that. So
Right.
it's nice to see that trend.
Right. I mentioned it before, but just to mention it again for people who are watching, the goal with that service is to see who's eligible for the service. And it's not all saying you're no longer eligible for the service. A lot of it is called conditional eligibility. So saying, well, in these situations, Lyft is really your only option. In other situations, the Cherriots fixed route bus will work to you. Your home is near the bus and your work is near the bus, or your home is near the bus and your doctor's appointment is near the bus. So that's the goal, to move people over to the fixed route solution beyond the bus with everyone else, be part of the community, and also lower those costs. So.
Thank you. Other questions? I guess we'll move on to the next item. Thanks. And the next item is a report on House Bill 2017.
Thank you, and I will provide that report. So as you know, the passage of House Bill 2017, which is titled Keep Oregon Moving, was the legislature's significant investment in transportation to help further the things that Oregonians value: a vibrant economy with good jobs, strong communities with good quality of life, clean environment, and safe, healthy people. But more importantly, it also established a new dedicated source of funding for public transportation in Oregon. The new funding source is called the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund. There's 4 components of the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund. The first is the formula, which is 90% of the money distributed to qualified entities, of which we are one. Talk more about the numbers in a minute. There's also a competitive grant component. 5% of the funds will be distributed through a competitive grant program. So think Connect Oregon that we used to compete for. This would be the similar process. 4% for inner city grants, and these will be to provide public transportation services between 2 or more communities, which will open up opportunities for us to connect with our neighbors, either as the provider or in partnership with our existing service. 1% of the funds will go to a technical resource center, which is really designed to help the providers out in the rural areas with training, planning, and information technology. Those organizations that maybe there's only 2 or 3 people, and some days you're driving, some days you're the general manager, the other days you're the bus washer, where they need help to really help plan for their infusion of their improvement funds. ODOT has been busy, and I have attached 5 attachments to your packet. It's really for you to have the latest information for the transportation package. It's not just about public transportation. It's about all forms of transportation in the bill. So I'd just like to review them real quickly. And I would say that all of these attachments are available on ODOT's transportation package website. So they're accessible to anyone. So attachment A is just a brief overview of the House Bill 2017. It shows all the different modes and all the components of it and the key milestones. Attachment B is a set of frequently asked questions about the package, and I think you've seen this before, but I wanted to create one master package. Attachment C is funding specifics for the Mid-Willamette Valley. They broke it down by all the different acts, so you can see here, and then in the Mid-Willamette Valley, there's $1.7 million on average per year going to Yamhill County Transit, $9.3 million to Salem Area Mass Transit District, and the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde getting $100,000, which is the guaranteed minimum for any provider who's qualified. And then it shows the breakdown of projects, how much each city and county will get from the package for streets and roads repairs, and bike and ped, and safe routes to school. Attachment D is the staff memo to the Oregon Transportation Commission, which met last week, detailing ODOT's implementation plan for this Transportation Improvement Fund, as well as the structure for the Rules Advisory Committee, which will write the rules for the fund. And actually, attachment E is the membership structure of that. This was approved at the OTC meeting last week, and so they are now forming the Rules Advisory Committee. There will be one specifically for transit. I have been asked in my role as the chair of the Public Transit Advisory Committee to sit on that committee. It looks like our first meeting scheduled, I believe, for October 24th, and we're trying to move quickly through that. One of the key components we're trying to establish early on is for the advisory committees for each of the transit providers, what is the components and requirements of that, so agencies can get started on forming those committees. And I also have another handout I want to give you. I emailed it to you today, and this is a copy of the information that ODOT put out, basically solidifying what I just said, that they approved their new rules for transit funding. There's new website, and you can sign up to get updates from them. It has some background on the State Transportation Improvement Fund. And as it develops through the Rules Advisory Committee, I will keep you posted. But at this time, that concludes my report.
Thank you. And it looks like you're up again because it's now the time for the general manager's report.
I just have a couple items. One, we are in the public transit conference season. So next week is the Oregon Transit Association's Fall Public Transportation Conference, which I'll be attending. That is being held in Pendleton, Oregon this year. And then the following week, myself and Director Krebs will be attending the American Public Transportation Association's annual meeting. And this year also happens to be its expo, which occurs every 3 years, and that'll be in Atlanta, Georgia. If you all will recall, the City of Salem has established a public transit committee led by the mayor. So the first meeting of that committee has been scheduled. It's for Friday, October 6th at 4 o'clock. If anyone's interested to attend, just let me know. And well, I'll just send you an email on where it's going to be. It's at the Civic Center. And I think there's another meeting scheduled for sometime in November. But this will kick off that process. And I'll report back after the meeting. That concludes my reports.
Thank you. I have had a busy month. Even though I was gone for almost 2 weeks, I put in more hours this week, or this month. But I did some things that have been to help this board. One of the things, I had a meeting with Mayor Bennett, and the main purpose of my meeting was to establish better communication between this board and the city council. And we discussed this, and one of the things we came up with was we're going to try to have a monthly presentation where either I or another member of this board will make a short presentation, 3 to 5 minutes, to the council. This gives us an opportunity to have a dialogue, and if they have something, they can bring it to this meeting and have a similar presentation to us, because I think they've been missing out on some of our activities that really they need to be involved in. So I'm hoping this is going to be the first step in better dialogue with the city council. The mayor is very interested in finding ways to work with us to improve transit service in this community. So I'm taking his offer on that, and not only is he talking about maybe other ways to fund the service, and so hopefully there can be some partnership things coming up there. And also I'm concerned about getting the facts out, because there's still a lot of misinformation out there about what we do for the community and how transit functions. And by having conversations with more leadership groups, we're going to be able to tell what we do and have better understanding, so we'll have better support for what we're doing. So anyway, that was the purpose of my meeting. We also had a meeting with Senator Courtney to discuss Senate Bill 10. Now, you remember he came to our work session and talked to us about the possible change in making this an appointed board rather than a elected board. And the conversation is he's still thinking about that, and so he has asked the leadership in this metropolitan area to talk about it and come back to him with some suggestions. And the elected board would be, the appointed board would be appointed by the governor, and we don't know how the selection would be made. What the criteria for membership would be, or what the terms and so forth. But that's what this committee is supposed to come up with, and the city councils and the counties and the transit agency are all working together and supposed to come back to Senator Courtney later with some suggestions. I had some orientation meetings with selected board members because we've had new committee assignments, so I met with several of you to actually, Alan led the meetings, but I was there as ex-appropriate member to talk about what we want to accomplish with our committee assignments. I attended the two transit advocacy meetings, several transit. One was held up in Northeast Salem, and they were discussing how to meet the needs of minority and low-income residents in our city. And hopefully we are doing a pretty good job of that, and when we are able to have 7-day-a-week service, we'll be doing a better job with that. I participated with our general manager in a age-friendly cities planning program for Salem, and this looks like it's going to be an ongoing program to help develop concepts so that our city, like Portland and other forward-thinking cities is a city that caters to all ages. We don't have age discrimination, and it makes it a place that is welcoming and has the facilities that allows people to grow old in place and not have to move when you get older. I attended the SCATS meeting this week, and most of the activities at the SCATS meeting, and I should say that's the Salem-Keizer Area Transportation Study, most of the activities there were dealing with the public participation plan for the outreach and the federal safety performance measures, and a little update on the State and Transportation Improvement Plan schedule, and the Connect Oregon and State Transportation Improvement Plan amendments, where some money was shifted from one program to another, and reports on some of the smaller projects around. One of the things that came up is that the retrofit of the Center Street Bridge for earthquake survival is in the State Transportation Improvement Plan, but it doesn't come up until the early 2020s. But that is something that will benefit our community. I attended 2 board meetings of the Association of Oregon Rail and Transit Advocates, and those are held in Portland, and I attended the Salem-Keizer Transit Day at the Salem Volcanoes baseball game. Had about over 27 hours of service this month, which was a pretty good month, because last month I didn't have that many, considering I was gone 2 weeks. I think it's now time for our committee reports, so I will call on Director Thompson for the Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee.
Yeah, we did have a special fund, we had an STF meeting, and you saw one of the issues that they presented, the $655. The other was basically the staff introduced the Senate Bill 2017 and discussed what implications it might have for the rural transportation during that meeting. And the October meeting has been canceled.
Okay. The Mid-Willamette Area Commission on Transportation, Director Kelly.
Well, we met in September, and we will be meeting again in October. The chair was absent and the vice chair was late, so I guess it was sort of a toss-up between 2 of us who've been on the steering committee for a long time, originally on who opened the meeting, so I did. And the first thing that we really discussed was the implementation of House Bill 2017, the transportation package. Again, basically a lot of the same information that we have in our packet. Because of the transportation package and some of the projects that were outlined in 2017, House Bill 2017, and the additional funding that ODOT will receive, the 2018-2021 Surface Transportation Improvement Program has proposed 123 projects added in by the Transportation Commission. Where, it's just about ready to go, because this is the 2018 sort of time frame. And so they're adding projects in. The Surface Transportation Improvement Program is a federal requirement, and so anything that has federal dollars or gets attached with federal dollars and state dollars has to be in the transportation program. So we heard a little bit about what sorts of projects those were, and then heard an update about what the Transportation Commission had decided to do on the 2021-24 State Transportation Improvement Program, which we will start seeing information and requests and like probably in January. Because it takes a long time to get a STIP totally done and improved, and it has to go through us, and it goes through other committees, and it goes to the Transportation Committee, and then it goes out, for public input, and then it comes back. So we will be having a lot of STIP discussions at the Area Commission in the future. And then the last big item on the agenda was the facility study for Oregon 22, basically think Mission Street, from 25th Street, the Mission, and 25th, where the main post office is, out to Gaffin Road, and some proposals to help on addressing some of the congestion. Now, this is just a facility study. There have been no dollars appropriated for it, but it's something that ODOT has done so that it would be basically some ideas on the shelf to be engineered as they go through and look at what projects they may do in the future. So with that, that was about what happened at the Area Commission.
Thank you. The next one is the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, Director Thompson.
We had no meeting this month.
Okay. And I already reported on the Salem-Kaiser Area Transportation Study, and the Oregon Metropolitan Planning Organization will have their next meeting in October, on next Friday, on the 6th of October, and that will be held in Bend. And I will be attending, and so that's all we have on that. So we're ready now for director reports, and I'll call on Director Evans to start off.
Well, it was a busy month. I attended the City Club event. The State Treasurer spoke. Articulate, nice guy. Appreciated what he had to say. I walked him back to the Capitol because I was headed there. Attended a workshop at Portland State. There was a keynote speaker that was quite good. And then I attended two of the workshops there, one on connections between transit and affordable housing. And there were three speakers, one from San Francisco, one from Portland, and one from Tucson, Arizona. The Tucson, Arizona fellow walked up to me at lunchtime and said, "Mr. Evans?" He had attended McKinley Elementary when I was teaching there. And I was really impressed with him before he told me that. No, quite an interesting connection that some cities are doing, planning with the city and with private entities in putting housing where transit is available. A novel idea. I think someone should consider that here too. Instead of piling developments into an area where there's no way to get across a bridge. It's just a social comment there. The other piece was I attended the West Salem Business Association, where Sheriff Garten spoke about the mental health advocacy group between police and mental health officials. I talked to Representative Evans, Paul Evans, no relation, at a town hall meeting, and then at the demo forum also. I got cornered at the demo forum because they found out that I was on the transit board. So a couple of folks wanted Saturday and Sunday service again. I told them, get on a committee and help us there. Visited the Highland Neighborhood Association, left information because I had a town hall that night also. Rode the ferries at Port Townsend and Bainbridge, and noticed that in sunny downtown Port Townsend on Sunday, the bus rolls through. I felt like, oh, everybody has bus service on Sunday but us. I now do Capitol tours. I give tours at the Capitol on Thursday afternoons. I started in July, and it's very interesting, the folks that you run into that want to know more about the city than just the Capitol, so I get a chance to speak with different hats there. Met with the co-chair of the West Salem Neighborhood Association discussing the current issues there. It's quite interesting about the tone and interest in a third bridge over there, and we could see a serious change in leadership there focused on the bridge, so that'll be interesting to see how that develops. Served as the eighth hole captain for the Women's LPGA. This is my 17th year of doing that. I also caddied for the Pro-Am and was fortunate enough, I found out on the 6th hole that I was caddying for Nancy Lopez's husband, which was really interesting because he's a great golfer too. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Rogers?
Yeah, you packed a lot in 2 weeks. Well, my month started out okay. I went with the rider to a certain bus stop where the complaint was maybe you can move the bus stop over here. I took some pictures and we looked it over and passed that on to the appropriate people and see if we can get some information back to the person. I've gone to the, I filled in comments on my Facebook page. You know, some people ask questions. So far they've been pretty easy, so I haven't had to ask anybody, you know, how do I answer this one? You know, but I hope to grow that some more. And I've gone to the NOLA and ELNA meetings, you know, keeping the face of transit in front of them. And they're all excited about the transportation package. It's always the same question. Saturday, Sunday service. When? And about that time, I had a family member who got extremely sick, needed an operation. There's been some recovery. So that sort of put a damper on transit-related stuff because take care of family first. But now that's going back the other way, so October should be, you know, full steam ahead. And I'm closing out September with what should be a huge multi-neighborhood party put on by ELNA and NOLA. And there's a couple other groups out there with acronyms that I don't have off the top of my head right now. And we hope to have a police presence and some fire trucks with the lights going. And I'm going to be there at a table with a bunch of things that Patricia has kindly put together for me, handing out brochures and schedules right here of the various routes around the Northeast Salem, and hopefully, you know, really put a good presence out there for the folks. And that's what I've got.
Thank you. Director Thompson?
Well, I attended the board in the work session. I attended the East Salem Suburban Neighborhood Association. I haven't been there for a while, so that was good to get back to that group. I attended the Chamber Policy Committee, and we discussed the upcoming library bond, and that was quite informative. I went to the SEDCOR Awards, annual awards luncheon, and that was interesting. And had breakfast with Alan once, and that's about it. And went on a one-week cruise and saw how one trolley in Astoria tried to haul 2,500 people downtown, and it doesn't work very well. Anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you. Director Kelly?
So I did not attend the work session this month because we were racing to get at least primer on our house, where we have scraped, sanded, vacuumed, and then primed, and so it was the same week as the rain coming. So I was scraping that night. There are times when you just have to do that. I had some meeting with a constituent, the Area Commission on Transportation, met with the general manager, attended the demo forum with Paul Evans, and he was kept on looking at me when he said, now, I have to be honest about this. I didn't vote for the bill because there was something taken out of it that I liked. But if I would have voted for it if my vote would have been needed, but it wasn't. So, but because of the transit element, he's been very helpful over there. Like you, Mr. Evans, I had sort of a fun wake-up call because I was at the Capitol and listening to hearings of appointments, and Catherine, Katie Piermine, who I was a significant adult in her life and the life of her sister and her brother on a couple of weekends when their parents were out of town, got appointed to the Land Conservation and Development Commission. She works for the Oregon Food Bank, and it will be a really good appointment because she's also from a farming family and understands those issues. And was at a social event where I had a chance to talk to Councillor Hoy, who was looking forward to the transit meeting, and attended Milo Piermine, Katie's grandmother's memorial service. Milo was a president of the Assistance League in Salem. She was on Chemeketa Community Board and just a really outstanding role model for women when women were really starting to need role models because things were changing in life. She was also very active at the Heritage Mission Mill. So she was in her 90s, so it was not a really sad celebration, but it was at least honoring someone who was important to the community at large, the agricultural community as well, because they have a family farm that's a century farm.
Director Bush?
Okay. I had a very busy month, and I thoroughly enjoy getting out and representing the board and representing the different organizations I participate in. I love our community. I attended the board meeting and the work session, several greeters opportunities with both Kaiser Chamber and Salem Chamber, and after the last Salem Chamber meeting, we found out about a groundbreaking for a new senior living center community at, Boone Road and 27th, out behind Kaiser Permanente there. So I got to get out there and walk in the mud with everybody else and watch them do their ceremonial scoops of dirt. That was kind of exciting. I attended the ball game. And it was 100 degrees that night. We're all out there in the heat watching the volcanoes. And again with volcanoes, I went to the time capsule burying a month after the eclipse, where they had several items from the community and the eclipse put in a capsule about this tall. One of them was a pair of sunglasses from Cherriots in there. And 50 years from now, they will open it again. And hopefully the two young men that helped bury the time capsule will be able to be there from Kaiser Youth Sports Association and Kaiser Little League. And they'll get to tell people what a thumb drive is and those kinds of things. And then they will open it again 100 years after that. And who knows if they'll know what anything is in there. But that was pretty fun. I went to the Hispanic Heritage Breakfast and learned more about that part of our culture. I met with our manager, and we also did the bus rodeo. That was pretty fun for me. I enjoy getting out there and being with our staff and getting to meet them and one-on-one, and it helps making decisions here even better and easier because I know that, and I know the community, and it helps to make wise decisions. I attended with Director Lincoln and her sangster at the bike repair station dedication, the partnership between the city and Cherriots and Drive Less Connect? Trip Choice all came together and were able to put a bike repair station like we have here at the Transit Center at Kaiser Civic Center. And by the time we got there, it's been about just a few weeks and it had been well used already. So it's a very popular item. Went to the Open Streets Salem activity, and again with Trip Choice, they had a demonstration about people who wear bicycle helmets and people who don't wear bicycle helmets. And their demonstration was putting a melon in a helmet and dropping it from an 8-foot ladder with the helmet or without the helmet. And it was very impactful to the people around them. I know I'm missing something. Oh, the Salem City Club, I attended that and got to listen to Senator Peter Courtney and Senator Jackie Winters both speak. That was a very informative luncheon that day. And a coffee with Kathy, and in the midst of all of that, my husband and I celebrated 40 years of marriage. So, and we're going strong. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Director Lincoln?
Well, I did attend the last board meeting and the work session. Went to the Area Commission on Transportation meeting and the Salem-Keizer Area Transportation Policy Committee meetings. The SCATS meeting is going to be real interesting, I think. I'm looking forward to that. Attended the West Keizer Neighborhood Association meeting. That was after the bicycle dedication ceremony at Keizer Civic Center. That was a great project, and I thank Roxanne Belts again for her help with that. I rode my bike down to Salem, Salem Open Streets last Saturday. Kind of missed all the excitement, but it's really nice to ride your bike when there aren't any other cars on the road. It's really pleasant. Went to the Hispanic Heritage Month breakfast, and it was interesting how many times they brought up the DACA issue, and how most of the people in there, I think, were probably in their 20s and 30s, or a good percentage of them, and concerned about their future. So that's something a large portion of our population here has on their minds. Attended the Salem Chamber Forum lunch and heard Chief Moore speak. It was an excellent talk he gave, and also at the demo forum, the talk that Paul Evans gave, I thought was very inspiring. If you get a chance to see that on CCTV, that's the demo forum from yesterday. I recommend listening to what he had to say. That's about it. I promised I would take a week off from meetings, so last week I had no meetings, and it was really nice. Worked on projects at home. That's it.
Thank you. That concludes our reports, and I think we now have one item that was brought up at our executive session that needs to be resolved here.
Do we need to do anything? Just go right into it? Do we
Yeah,
need
you may
to?
want to note that the board will now take up agenda item O.
Okay. Okay, I see. The board will now take up agenda item O, which is potential action on the general manager's performance evaluation and compensation.
Okay, I move that the board award General Manager Alan Pollock a $5,000 performance bonus.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there anything else to come before this board before we adjourn? Yes,
I have
Director.
one short question. Silverton gave up their shelter because they didn't want it there, or that they didn't have enough funds to do it. Does anybody know?
They chose not to put one in there. They could have, they were gonna use that 655 plus some money from the next biennium, but they ultimately chose not to put a shelter in that stop.
Oh, okay. Would they if they got one?
I'm not sure I understand.
Do we have any left that we
No.
took out?
No.
Okay, just asking.
I have one more question.
Yes, Director Bush.
I know that we're going to do a board retreat next month. Has that been decided where yet? In regards to House
date?
Bill 2017?
CCBI.
CCBI, okay.
And the date is?
October 21st,
Okay.
9 o'clock to about 2-ish. The agenda will be ready
I mean,
soon.
Is that a public meeting?
Yes, they always
So
are.
if folks who are watching here want to come, they can?
Yes.
Mhm. Okay. Nothing else? If so, the meeting is adjourned.